Hello, my name's Shane Strachan, and I'm Art UK's Learning and Engagement Officer for Scotland and Northern England. In this episode of Masterpieces at Home, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Sculptor Mary Bourne, who has previously taken part in our Masterpieces in Schools programme. Through this programme, we loan an artwork to a school for a day to inspire learning, thanks to generous support from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, Stavros Niarchos Foundation, R.K. Harrison and Hiscox. In 2019, Mary ran creative activities in several Scottish Highland schools, inspired by works loaned from Inverness Museum and Gallery's collection. And in early March 2020, we also visited Elgin High School with 3 of our own works from our private collection. Today, Mary will explore one of these works from her home in Moray, and then she'll demonstrate a creative activity you can try in your own home. Hi Mary, how are you?
Hi Shane, I'm good, thanks.
Whereabouts are you at the moment?
I am sitting in the, what would you call it? The dining room of my house at home in Speyside.
You've got a lovely view behind.
Thank you very much, yes. I just wish I could push the window frame slightly out of the way.
To get some background for viewers at home who maybe aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about your background and career as a sculptor?
Yes, I grew up in the northeast of Scotland, near Aberdeen, and then I went to Edinburgh College of Art, where I studied sculpture. Since I graduated, I've done a lot of work in public, sort of public sculptures, and working with people. So I've been a professional sculptor for over 30 years, which is quite shocking to think about. I work mostly in natural stones, carving natural stones, although I do work in other material as well, but that's the main thing. So this is a piece called Shield, which has been carved in Scottish slate. This is Kilmartin slate from Argyll, and it's very, very hard. And it actually demonstrates one of the difficulties of filming sculpture in 2 dimensions, in that you can't really see what shape it is. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tip it up. So heave ho.
I remember how heavy this was.
Yes. You've had to move this one yourself. So there we go. You can see now that it's actually a shield shape, and it is called Shield. I can't tip it all the way up, but I'll tip it up a wee bit so you can see.
Great.
So this is a piece I made a few years ago when I was doing residency near Culloden Moor, which was the last battle fought on British soil, and was followed by all sorts of atrocities, unfortunately. So not a glorious episode. And while I was resident there, I was sort of thinking about how charged up the countryside was around the battlefield. I've got some photos here. I don't know if you'll be able to see them, but there we go. I don't know if you can see, but the battlefield is like a bog, and then round about it are forestry plantations, which are very sort of spiky and dark around the battlefield. So I spent a lot of time while I was there thinking about how the memories were kind of soaked into the landscape. The history was soaked into the landscape. But then there was like another element as well, in that my father had been a ship's doctor in the First Gulf War shortly before that. And that was my first experience of having somebody close to me involved in something like that. And it was quite a traumatic thing. Made me question all sorts of things. So I had this sort of personal response, as well as the historical knowledge of what had gone on there. And I was trying to untangle all this and think what was going on. And I started off just by doing lots of drawings in ink of the landscape. Now, I don't know if you can see that, reflections. Just these are little trees that are regenerating on Darver Moor, which is where a character called the Wolf of Badenoch hung out. So that one also had its own historical charge. So I was started, as I often do, I start just with observing things and through the process of drawing, simplifying, and then get back to the studio and sort of keep simplifying and simplifying and thinking about what's important in the landscape. So I was thinking about the clearing, the battlefield being the clearing in the middle, surrounded by trees, and the trees maybe standing in for soldiers, a bit like Burnham Wood in Macbeth. Developing the shape of the trees. I don't know if you can see that this drawing, these little shapes that I've simplified down are a bit like these bits on the sculpture here.
Is that in brush and ink?
Brush and ink, these are brush and ink. Pen and ink, again, and a bit of fluff as well. So I was sort of simplifying and simplifying and thinking how you go from a great big wide open landscape into an object, into a sculpture. And it was all coming together, these ideas of spears and so on. And then I was remembering about some shields that I'd seen when I was in Africa. I don't know if you can see this one here, the Maasai shield.
Yeah.
And I thought that the imagery on the shields looked a bit like images of confrontation, the sort of the two sides and the boundary in between. And I thought it was kind of interesting that the imagery they were using perhaps reflected what was going on when they were using the shield. So all this kind of came together in this piece here, which basically is based on the form of two forestry plantations on a hill, you could say, or two armies confronting each other. And it uses the quality of the slate that I was talking about, where the dark is polished, and then as you chisel it, it goes light, it bruises and it makes it light. So it's almost like a chalk drawing or something.
Yeah, the effect is really, even though I'm seeing it to a 2D film right now, it looks really 3D, the kind of the contrast and the shading.
Yes, it's almost a bit of a marriage between drawing and sculpture, in fact. I have got here just a board with some paper on it. I've got 2 pots of water, one of which I've already washed my brush in, so it's a bit grey, and one of which is clean water. I've got a couple of brushes here. Now, I mean, this is a fancy artist's brush, but actually you could just use like a brush for painting a wall, you know, a big wide brush like that. And then I've got a little fine brush.
Yeah.
And I've got some ink. Now, you don't have to use ink. You could use just any sort of water-based paint, watercolour or poster paint or whatever.
Yeah.
So I am going to do a little drawing out here of Ben Rinnis. This is where I take my life in my hands and hope it goes well. I do a lot of drawings and only some of them do I keep. So what I'm doing here, what I'm doing here is I'm just using this big broad brush to do the outline of Ben Rinnis.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow the quality of this water-based ink to hopefully give some of the sort of variation and mood that you can see out there, so that as it comes in, just allowing it to go along the wet bit that I've made in the paper to create the outline. Ben Rinnis is almost always like a big dark wedge on the horizon.
I can see it's kind of slightly bleeding into the water.
That's it. That's what I like. I like a little bit of sort of variation. Okay, so there we are. We've got a big black Ben Rinnis. And then I don't know if you can see at the bottom of Ben Rinnis, there's actually a little forestry plantation. So I think I'll put that in. That's something that I quite like. So instead of painting it in great detail, I'm just going to do like little dabs of my brush. Oopsie, went into Ben Rinnis there. Right. I'm thinking maybe I could do with a bit more wet around here. And also, can you see there's a line of fence posts just outside the window? I don't know if you can see it from where you are.
Oh yeah, a bit nearer, just past them, the bush and. in the frame.
Yeah.
You can see from, yeah.
So I'm just going to pop them in. They lead your eye in.
Yeah.
Quite fond of these fence posts. Well, inevitably, it's not the best drawing I've ever done. But
it's just the simplification of the forms that's really...
hopefully it gives you an idea of how you can simplify and you can use sort of jumps in tone. I don't want everything black and white, I want some. So this is like the ploughed field I've got coming on in the front here. And I'm going to show you one more thing in here, hopefully. Wait, I've dropped it. Yeah. There's a bit of kitchen roll. So if things go a bit too far, as they have in my Benrinis, you can just soak off a bit of the black and take it back again. So as I say, probably not the best drawing ever done, but I hope that it gives you an idea of just how I'm sort of simplifying and I'm just choosing certain elements that are important to me. So that is sort of the first stage that I go through in developing a drawing and ideas. From there, I will probably think about what is the most important thing. You know, the thing that interests me the most important thing that I want to follow up.
Yeah.
I've got one or two drawings that I've done in the past based on these views that I'll just show you quickly. So remember that line of fence posts just outside the window there?
Yeah.
There's something that I've really enjoyed looking at over the years. You know, I've got this beautiful big expanse, but it's the fence that's been fascinating me recently. And quite often I find it's the man-made things that are being put into the landscape that I'm interested in. So this is this line of fence posts. Yeah. And I like them because they sort of measure things. So they're a bit like marks on a ruler. They're measuring the length of the field. As the sun shines on them, the sun moves around, the shadows move around. So they're a bit like,
little sundials.
Yeah. So there's a couple of those there. So that is something I was quite interested in. And then out of my other window, which is pointing that way, there's actually a line of pylons. They arrived about 3 years ago, and they were a bit of a shock at the time because we had lived here 20 years and had always had the beautiful rural view. And then suddenly these things arrived, and we weren't told very much in advance. And they were literally dropped out of the sky. They were made elsewhere, and they got an enormous helicopter that came specially from Canada to do it.
Oh, wow. Okay. It was literally.
They were literally, and in sort of there was a big long lead in where they made all the foundations, but then in 2 days they were all dropped into place, and you can actually see 28 of these pylons. And that took a bit of getting used to. And one of the things I did to try and get used to the idea that our beautiful view was now full of pylons was I did some drawings. So they're not conventional pylons, they're special pylons. They look like this, 2 big poles with cross bracing. And I think I was just trying to understand them as part of the landscape. And but I have never made a sculpture until now do with it. And today is the day. So the first thing I've got is just a baseboard. It could be a cornflake packet or something. I had actually just recycled all our cornflake packets. So I've got a bit of board that I found in a drawer. And then what I thought we would do, you know, when, I'm sure everybody will have done this, you fold up a piece of paper and then you do a little drawing of a person and then you unfold them. You get a little string, because the sun's on the screen, I can't actually see if you can see it, but a string of little people. Yeah. But I thought instead of little people, I would do these pylons, which, as you saw, there are lots of them all together, and they, with the strings between them, they look a bit like they're holding hands. So I thought they were a bit like some sort of science fiction chain gang or something like that, walking across the hills. So I thought I'd have a go at see what happened if I did the same thing. So this is just like a demonstration. I drew a pylon on a piece of paper, and I actually drew it really a bit longer. And the reason for that is when I cut it out, I was planning to fold that bottom bit up so that there's something to stick onto the base.
Yeah.
So to add a little bit on the bottom so that you can stick it down. And I did cut this out already, and it took me 2 hours. So it's a good thing that I'm not doing it now. But here is my little line of pylon people.
People. That's weird.
They do look like people. Well, it's the sort of pylons they are. They've got 3 pairs of arms. And then they do look like they're holding hands. The wires move a little bit. It's very windy here, being up a bit by the mountains. And the wires move a bit and they sing when it's windy. It's actually quite a nice noise. I don't mind the noise of the wires singing. Okay, and then what I'm planning to do with these, because they're zigzaggy, they keep wanting to go back into the zigzag sort of shape.
Yeah. So
I'm just bending them round the other way, and I've just put a bit of blue tack down here on the baseboard.
What you've cut out there, is that card or paper?
Well, I did use card, but frankly, I think paper would have been better because it was really, really quite hard work going through 5 layers of card.
Yeah.
Which is why it took me so long. Right. One more.
I'm really enjoying the shadows they're creating on your table because it kind of looks like you're drawing earlier with the little sundial shadows.
Yes, well, that's right. I was hoping that the sun wouldn't come out too soon because it makes it a bit difficult to see, but then I was hoping it would come out at the end when I was
by magic.
So obviously what I'm interested in is both the pylons but also their relationship to me and to where I live. So I made myself a little house. So can you see here, it's just an oblong of cardboard, which I folded in half down the middle, and then just fold the 2 ends up into the middle. So you've got it sort of folded in 4 like that. And then when you unfold it, you can make a little house. So that is my house, which is very little compared to the pylons. And then I wanted it to look, because it was a little bit lost there in the middle, and I wanted it to look a little bit more sort of homey. So I thought I would make a little garden fence. So again, I took a strip of paper and did the same thing, the concertina thing. Folded it up, and then I cut, I don't know if you can see here, instead of cutting a person or a pylon, this time I cut a cross. I don't know if you can see that. And then when you unfold it, you can probably see more clearly.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes a little garden fence. And like the pylons, it just wants to stay in its zigzag. So it actually took a little while just to unkink all the kinks. So I've done one already.
Yeah.
A little garden fence. And that just gives that a little bit more presence in the middle there.
Thank you so much for that. That was excellent. And I really enjoyed hearing kind of your process, seeing some of your work, and then seeing something that you managed to create with, limited materials at home. So thank you and well done. You're up to the challenge.
I really, really enjoyed it. First time I've ever made a paper sculpture.
Yeah.
So there we go.
A new career path for you.